Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, captains of industry, members of the media, and all of you joining us virtually, it gives me the greatest pleasure to welcome you to the 5th Annual African Business Roundtable, or African Business Forum, brought to you by the UNECA, Google, and also Africa 24. This is an annual flagship event that takes place on the sidelines of the summit of the African Union. And effectively, it's meant to be a dialogue that brings together the private sector and the public sector to talk about the issues that pertain to Africa today and to see how we can accelerate programs that will lead to a collective accomplishment of the goals that we deem fit. These are goals that are well documented and well defined in the African Union's Agenda 2063, and they're also in alignment with the global agenda for the attainment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. Our theme for this 5th African Business Forum is investing in multimodal transport infrastructure and optimize the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's a focus essentially on transportation, aviation in particular, and the tourism economy, through which there are incredible synergies across the value chain. So let me talk you through some numbers, just by way of describing and explaining why we're here today. How do goods move around the African continent? Well, statistics show that road is king, and that in terms of goods and services, we are looking at a figure of 77% and more of how goods are ferried from one market to another. When it comes to commuters, people going to work, people moving from country to country, road accounts for 90% of how people move across the African continent. Shipping. This is how African minerals and African resources are led to the international market. Shipping constitutes 62% of how goods are moved in the continent and out of the continent. Air travel, although it's glamorized by Nollywood and Hollywood, it only really accounts for about 28% of cargo that moves in and out of the African continent. And then rail, even though we've got about 100,000 kilometers of railway lines, only 1% of goods that move through African markets are moved by train. I'm talking you through these figures because if you look at them, you could say, well, it's an indictment. Rail at 1%, it suggests that we haven't invested in sufficient rail infrastructure or that there isn't maintenance. And that's true. And the conversations we're going to have here today will speak to some of those issues. But if you prefer to look at the glass as half full, then you could say 1%, that gives us almost 90% worth of opportunities to fix African rail, to modernize African rail, and to bring it into international best practice. Our view here today is that the glass is half full, and that the opportunities to optimize transport, the transport sector, and the opportunities within transportation, aviation, rail, and road are immense. We're going to talk you through bankable projects, we're going to talk you through opportunities, and we're going to talk you through innovation, because we believe so much can be unlocked through the sector of the economy, especially as we look towards economic recovery in what we hope will be a post-COVID world into the future. The logistics sector, ladies and gentlemen, is worth over $160 billion in Africa today. And if we make the necessary investments, we could push up demand for freight to 28% within the next 8 years. This is what we're hoping to do through this conversation, is show you the wealth of opportunities and show you what can be done when we invest in the transport sector, when we invest in infrastructure that supports the transport sector, and when we encourage people to visit our magnificent continent and really catalyze transportation through tourism as well. So with those few words, it is me again saying the warmest welcome to the 5th African Business Forum, brought to you by the UNECA, Google, and Africa 24. Please make sure that you post your questions, that we can pose them to our distinguished guests when we're having our conversations. Please enjoy the conference, And again, please see the glass as half full. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our host. She is the UN Under Secretary General and the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Please welcome Dr. Vera Songwe.
Good morning. Thank you everybody for being with us today from across the continent and beyond. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. We are having one of our very rare in-person events, and it's very good to see everybody who is in the room with us today, but many of us still cannot travel, still cannot meet, and many people haven't yet begun to meet together. So let me start by thanking His Excellency, the President of Botswana, President Masisi, who, thank you so much, Mr. President. You have been a faithful presence at the African Business Forum. Thanks for being with us. We are starting slightly, I've been waiting for the President of Sierra Leone, who is on his way here. He's probably having his meetings before he comes there. His Excellency, the President of Niger as well. Thank you very much for being with us. All captains of industry, given the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, my sister Amani Abuzei, thanks for being with us. All other protocols observed. I'm going to hurry because I know that the President of Botswana has a time constraint and is going to come right after me. So let me just go into the thrust of the matter. Yesterday we were talking about transportation, but we're not really talking about transportation. We're talking about how we revive the African continent, how we build forward, what is it that we need to do. And I'm sure that when we say this, many of us then begin to think, we need to create jobs. Everybody's thinking, are they going to tell us how they create jobs? Yes. What we have seen is that as we talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, we have the tendency to just talk about it as something that is going to deliver on trade. I forgot to recognize, of course, the Vice President of the Republic of Gambia, who was supposed to be here, but is now represented by His Excellency, the Minister Tumbera. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just working on the pressure of Botswana. But one of the things that we talk about very often is the service sector. Increasingly, the service sector on the continent contributes over 50% of growth. And this is a sector that is not well understood, not well complemented by resources. But if Africa has to grow and build forward better, we must look at the service sector. When we talk about the service sector, yes, we all know about the banking sector, and there's a sort of quick focus on the banking sector. But there is two sectors that we tend to forget. Tourism, for the countries that are tourism dependent, and of course the Minister of the Gambia, which was why we really wanted the Gambia to be with us, and you will see in a few minutes why the Gambia really summarizes what we're talking about here today. The tourism sector contributes in many cases over 15% of GDP. During the summer months and the winter months in the Gambia, sometimes there is more tourists in Banjul than there are Banjulians. I don't know if that's how we call them. And then on the transport side, we do need people to help us move, as we've spoken. Your Excellency, welcome, and thank you for joining us. We do need people to sort of take the goods around. We talk about the CFTA and the CFTA's potential, but let me just give you a few numbers about why we are talking about this. If we were able to ensure that our transport sector works well, we could create 160 million jobs. And I think if there's a message that we want to take away from here when we talk about what is it that we need to do to create jobs for our youth, how do we revive Africa's economy? I'll come to the billions of dollars. But first of all, let's talk about the jobs that we need to create, because that is how we grow prosperity. People get jobs, people have a constant income, and then we can grow the economies. Now, where will those jobs come from, and what do we need to do? As we know, trade requires, even when you do it on the internet, it requires still that you take a physical commodity from point A to point B. To do that, we need railroads, airlines, and shipping. And when we look at the continent today, we still need 2 million trucks if we were going to be able to generate the kind of ambition that the CFTA is promising, we're in a deficit of 2 million trucks to move goods across the continent. So if you just think about it, and we can see that in many of our ports, the trucks that are waiting either to service one part of our continent or another, this is going to cost $340 billion. So there is the investment for the private sector. It's a no-brainer that if we have those kinds of investments, we will get to where we want to go to. On cargo and aircraft, yes, for those of us who live in Ethiopia, when you land, you see, 100 fleets of airplanes, and you think, wow, that's a lot. But we need 3, 4, 5 times of that on this continent for the CFTA to actually work. We need 243 more cargo planes on the continent and $25 billion to actually let the CFTA meet its potential. So again, investments in airlines. Today, when you compare our train and our railways, and there is a lot of discussion, and my sister knows about this, standard gauge, normal gauge, how should the trains work, what is the interconnectivity, and the feeder programs have some of this. We are nowhere near where we need to be if really we want to get intra-Africa trade going. And as we talk about what more we need, we're beginning to understand why intra-Africa trade is not doing so well, because we do not have the infrastructure, even if we have the goods. And it's not uncommon that flowers leave Kenya and go to the Netherlands and then leave the Netherlands back to Gabon. It is happening because we don't have the infrastructure. So we are creating jobs, not that we don't want to create jobs in the Netherlands, but we'd rather create them on the continent. And if we were taking the flowers from Kenya directly into Gabon, essentially all the value add will happen on our continent, and we will be able to create jobs. And this is the virtuous circle. So I have been quoted as saying Africa doesn't need a Marshall Plan because we have the CFTA. This is our plan. This is the plan for recovery. And here we're just talking about the roads and the transport segment of the CFTA. We could talk about the internet segment and what that will do, and of course the healthcare segment. But in our rail and trains, we are only today moving 3% of our goods by rail. We could, with the CFTA and immediate investment in the sector, $36 billion is what is needed to at least boost that to 6.8%. Europe has 17% of its cargo that is moved by rail across its space. So these are the ambitions that we are looking at. Now, people will say, well, we just need to start somewhere. What do you do? To upgrade our existing road infrastructure, 600 kilometers of existing road infrastructure that need to be upgraded to move the CFTA to a next level. And these are roads where our small and medium enterprise women are taking food commodities, say from Ghana to Togo to Benin, from Nigeria to Cameroon, from Ethiopia to Kenya. All these border posts where we have a lot of trade and a lot of activity happening usually need some additional investments to make it happen, even as we, of course, are going to be working on ensuring that we have one-stop border shops. And my brother Wamkele Mene from the CFTA Secretariat and all of us are really working on how we then improve on the fiscal and taxation policies. So without further ado, before we give the floor to my sister Mani and then to the president of Botswana, please bear with us for a few minutes. Really, I think what we are talking about here is people usually say 51% of Africa's GDP in the service sector. This is what it is about. It is about all this logistics business and the potential for jobs, the potential to bring ICT into the logistics business, to make it even more profitable for the private sector, but more importantly, for each African to begin to see where the prosperity from the CFTA will come from. So once again, thank you so much. We have done a report on this, which is very extensive about what parts of the continent we need which infrastructure, and we're very happy with all the captains of industry and the private sector and the financial sector for being here with us today, because if we begin to focus on how we finance this, then I'm sure that the promise of the CFTA will more than deliver into the future. So once again, thank you for being here, and we hope that this series on road infrastructure and transport infrastructure and tourism, and in closing, I go back to the Gambia where I started. So the Gambia doesn't have an airline, but the Gambia is one of the countries on the continent that has one of the largest per population, per capita visitor increases. So when we talk about the single African transport market, we need those open skies, because you don't need to have an airline to get people to come and see the treasures that lie across the continent, from Djibouti to Dakar and from Cape to Cairo. There's an amazing amount of artwork, of culture that people can come into the continent to see. But the persistence of wanting to have national flags is actually stopping jobs being created in the tourism sector. And so again, our final plea is to say, can we come together and look at how implementing and ratifying the single African air transport market will really begin to generate jobs for the continent, open up this year, just ending, has been the year of arts and culture for the African Union, but we can't see all the arts and culture that exist on our continent if we do not let transport come in a way that is competitive for those who want to come in. So once again, thank you so much for listening, and I give the floor over to Amani to take over. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, distinguished participants, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I would first like to start by thanking my dear sister, Dr. Vera Songwe, Executive Director of UNECA, and her team for calling and for organizing this Africa Business Forum on an important theme, which is transport, but with particular focus on aviation and tourism and their implication and connection linkages with the African Free Trade Area. Excellencies, distinguished participants, as we all know, efficient and affordable transport and connectivity are key to the effective operation and success of the African Free Trade Area. However, Africa still lacks in the area of trade competitiveness. Transport costs in Africa are among the highest in the world and harm our continent's productivity and competitiveness on local and international trade markets. High transport costs in Africa are partly due to insufficient, affordable, and reliable transport and logistics services. On average, transport costs in Africa are 63% higher than in developed countries. Transport costs represents between 30% and 50% of the continent's total value of exports, compared to an average of about 17% of the value of exports in other developing countries. For our landlocked countries, transport costs are significantly higher and may constitute about 3/4 of the total value of exports. These costs, as you know, have increased even since the advent of COVID, due to the cost for tests and the different health requirements, which is making transport and travel across the continent even more costly and more difficult, not to mention the complication of unharmonized health protocols across our continent. I also would like to congratulate UNECA and my sister, Dr. Vera Songwe, for the excellent report, which she highlighted in her intervention. I'm not going to go through the different elements she highlighted, but let me focus on aviation in Africa. Aviation, as you know, is a driver for socioeconomic development in our continent. It already supports over $60 billion in other sectors, and about 7 million jobs on this continent. African aviation, like in other regions, is important and crucial in the fight against the pandemic. And we've all seen how our carriers have been distributing, emergency and humanitarian supplies, including the vaccines. And having viable and efficient aviation sector is even more important than it has ever been. To promote Africa's physical integration and allow the effective operation of the AFCFTA,
We at the AUC have been mobilizing efforts and attention to expedite the development and implementation of efficient and reliable regional and transcontinental transport infrastructure in Africa, mainly through our program for infrastructure development, abbreviated as PIDA. And we have been doing this together with AUDA-NEPAD and the African Development Bank. And I'm sure by the end of this month, on 28th of February in Nairobi, you will all join us to hear more about the PIDA program, the kind of progress that we have made, and also to help us mobilize resources and efforts and catalyze and synergize around this continental program for infrastructure. But of particular importance, like my sister Vera said, is the flagship project of the African Union, which is the Single African Air Transport Market, which was launched in 2018. Its main objective is to create one single air transport market in Africa to liberalize our air transport services and drive economic integration. The SATAM, as it's abbreviated, strongly supports the continental free trade area and free movement of persons by creating more air connections for people, for goods, for services across the continent, reducing the risk and cost associated with intra-regional trade, while opening more trade lanes and opportunities to conduct businesses across the continent. Air transportation is also essential for facilitating free movement, as it can provide better connectivity than other modes of transport, particularly for intra-regional and longer lanes of traffic. I'm proud to report that currently 35 African states with a total population of more than 800 million people, accounting for 61% of the population of our African continent and 90% of intra-African air transport market, have joined the Single African Air Transport Market and have opened up their markets to each other. The successful implementation of this Single African Air Transport Market within those 35 member states or African countries will surely encourage the remaining 20 African countries to also join. A recent continental study on the benefits of SATAM, commissioned by AUC and implemented by or undertaken by IATA, has shown that with air transport liberalization, it is forecast that an additional 145 country pairs will receive direct services. The study further found that across the 55 African Union countries, air transport liberalization is projected to result in an additional 600,000 jobs and $4 billion US dollars additional GDP per annum, additional 4 million tourist visits across Africa, an incremental 300,000 jobs in tourism and related industries, and $1.5 billion are expected to be generated in that sector. All of this contribute to increasing direct and indirect jobs, as I said, to the African women and youth particularly. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the importance of tourism industry cannot be underscored. And one of the things I think that was revealed by the COVID pandemic is the importance of tourism and its share in our economies in Africa. It contributes significantly to the socio-economic development of almost all African states. Apart from its overall contribution of over 10% to GDP in our economies, it is a massive creator of jobs and generator of income, especially for women and men and small, micro, medium enterprises. From the taxi driver who takes, the tourist to the airport, to again the taxi driver who drives this tourist back to the airport. It is an incredible employer, and it's also it helps, with the conservation of wildlife, of our tangible and non-tangible heritage, of creating these human ties and promoting our countries. The benefits of tourism, as I said, cannot be, and its share it cannot be underscored. Over the past years, the African Union Commission, back then I was still also the Commissioner for Tourism, we developed the African Tourism Strategic Framework, and which, together with our partners in the tourism sector, we managed to develop strategies and actions to particularly promote cross-border marketing of tourism packages and the creation of a strong brand Africa of tourism products and services that would sell the continent's tourism industry as a unique package with special value to the world. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the pandemic has seriously affected both our air transport and tourism industries, very hardly hit. You are all aware that massive losses in revenues were incurred to the entire African aviation value chain, airlines, airports. Same thing could be said about tourism. The pandemic also revealed serious fragility and vulnerabilities and inefficiencies. We need to review those sectors. We need to be more agile, to adapt, to rethink the business models, put in place cost management, and develop new business models, making use of the fantastic opportunity of digitalization, among others, to improve tourist and travel experience. Especially in the health, related to health. The pandemic also highlighted the importance of diversification and promotion of our regional and continental supply chains, intra-African trade and intra-African tourism, and the need to urgently to harmonize the health protocols, as I said. Excellencies, I am sure that this fifth business forum opportunity to all our partners, the private sector, public sector, to exchange and on the opportunities, on the challenges, on the potential for investment, and to lay a strong foundation, to help us lay strong foundations for the air industry, for the tourism, for recovery, and for a new business model in those industries. I look very much forward to the deliberations, and I once again thank you, Neka, for organizing this high-level forum, and wish you all a fruitful event. Thank you.
We really appreciate your time coming here and sharing your thoughts with us. Your Excellency Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, the Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy at the African Union Commission, and we thank you very much also our host, Dr. Vera Songwe, the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of the UNECA. Both of these leaders reminded us what matters most. Whatever we talk about here today, it is ultimately about people, it is ultimately about jobs and opportunities. And let's not forget that the people who benefit most are Africa's youth and women as well. So thank you very much for reminding us of those very salient points. Now, the AU Commissioner referenced the costs of moving goods across markets. For an average African country, it's about 33%. But if you're landlocked, those costs could even be higher, simply because you're so far away from the ports and you're so far away also from core markets. And this is an important segue as I introduce our next guest. But I want to start with a little bit of sentimentality. Botswana is a country I know really well because my mother is a Motswana. And we know Botswana as one of Africa's most well-established democracies. We know it as the largest producer and exporter of diamonds. And we know it as a country that has a beautiful topography in the Okavango Delta. So there's a lot to play for in Botswana, from tourism to mining and minerals and culture that was referenced earlier on. But for all of us, in order to savor and experience Botswana, we have to get there. And we shouldn't be getting to Botswana by passing through South Africa or Namibia or Botswana or even London. It should be easier than that. And so freer skies would really create an incredible leverage for an incredible African country. These are issues that President Mokgweetsi Masisi is passionate about, not just to give Botswana great exposure to the world, but to empower Botswana's really talented youth, a country that has an incredible human capital. That is why he joins us today, and it gives me the greatest pleasure to welcome warmly His Excellency Mokgweetsi Masisi, the President of Botswana. Just be aware that the President is joining us virtually, and so we're just making sure that technically our lines connect. We do know he's there. We have tested those lines, but let's just give some time to the satellite. I think what we will do in the interim, whilst we just make sure that that line connects properly, is remind you that our partners for this year's 5th African Business Forum are Google Global, Google Africa, and Africa 24. Google, as you know, is one of the world's top 10 most valuable companies. They are regarded as what you call big tech because they see an opportunity in how you utilize digital technology to underpin so many of the systems that drive industries around us. Transport and logistics can really benefit from big tech because when you utilize
To all readers from eTurbo News, this is Jürgen with eTurbo News in Honolulu. We're hearing nothing because apparently the microphones are turned off on the other side. It's not us. Just stay tuned. Hopefully they're going to realize it soon and give us sound again. Thank you. Again, let's take the time here, since we don't hear anything, from Addis Ababa. This is Jürgen with eTurbo News in Honolulu. You're listening to the Africa Business Forum. It's a United Nations event. And World Tourism Network, Dr. Walter Memzebi will be a speaker a little bit later.
So for all our guests virtually, this is the 5th African Business Forum brought to you by the UNECA, Google, and Africa 24. We're talking about investing in transport infrastructure, the different modes of transportation, from rail to shipping to road and aviation. In particular, we want to see the synergy between transport logistics and tourism. Because if we can get people visiting the African continent to explore this, our motherland, its beauty, its cultures, then not only do we drive tourism revenues, but we really accelerate the process of developing our road infrastructure for those who are road tripping, our sea and maritime infrastructure for those who would like to cruise. We are developing our infrastructure in aviation as we move people seamlessly across our 54 markets, and ultimately, we're ensuring that people have the very best of Africa. Ndate Masisi.
Hello, Lorato. Sorry, I just stepped out for an emergency, but I'm back and delighted to take part. So I have your time. I have time. Please.
Business Forum. I yield the virtual floor to you, Masisi. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Your Excellency, Head of State and Government here present, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and its partners, captains of industry, here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Allow me from the outset to preface my remarks by thanking the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and its partners for successfully organizing the fifth Africa Business Forum, which is being convened on the margins of the 35th Ordinary Session of the African Union Assembly of Heads of State and Government, as well as applaud them for tremendously promoting entrepreneurship and development in Africa. I am privileged to be part of this important investment promotion initiative geared towards the realization of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. The forum comes at an appropriate time when countries across the globe are struggling to recover from the devastating effects of the global health pandemic occasioned by COVID-19, which has adversely impacted the global economy and people's livelihoods. This forum affords us an opportunity to share experiences and innovative ways of transforming our economies for the betterment of our peoples, countries, regions, and indeed, the global community. The theme of this year's forum is investing in multimodal transport infrastructure to optimize the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area, a focus on air transport and tourism, challenges us to prioritize and devise innovative ways of growing our economies in the midst of the pandemic, particularly in the transport and tourism sectors. Your Excellencies, now bringing the theme closer home, I must hasten to highlight that, like other countries, Botswana's air transportation and tourism industry have suffered over the past 2 years due to travel restrictions brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. This prompted government to put in place a robust economic recovery and transformation plan with the goal of resuscitating the alien sectors, among them the air transport and tourism. In this regard, Botswana recently revised the national tourism policy, which aims at leveraging existing resources to enhance citizen economic participation in lucrative tourism sites in the Okavango Delta, as well as national parks around the country. The revised policy seeks to promote domestic travel and intra-Africa travel through the implementation of key supporting projects, ongoing infrastructure upgrades, alignment to Africa Agenda 2063, and the implementation of an Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Furthermore, Botswana recently partnered with the European Union delegation to Botswana and SADC under the Job Creation Investment Climate in the Eastern and Southern Africa and Indian Ocean Region, EASA-IO program, with the overall objective of promoting full and productive employment as well as decent work. Under the program, one of the priorities is to upgrade the eco-tourism value chains and increase investments, innovation, trade, and sustainable production, as well as consumption patterns. We remain optimistic that at the end of the program, we will have transformed the sector and recovered from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Botswana Air Transport and Tourism and the AFCTA. Botswana, ladies and gentlemen, is signatory to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is the world's largest free trade area since the formation of the World Trade Organization, WTO. In this regard, the government of Botswana has embarked on a number of key national projects to upgrade the existing air transport infrastructure to multimodal infrastructure, with a view to enable the air transport and tourism sectors to leverage on the provision and the aspirations of the AFCTA and Agenda 2063. The following notable projects demonstrate Botswana's readiness for uptake of the AFCTA. total upgrades and expansion of the Gaborone, Francistown, Mao, and Kasane international airports for increased demand for travel, as well as air transportation to support the transport and tourism sectors. The Kazungula Bridge, the majestic Kazungula Bridge, connecting Zambia and Botswana completion. Mohembo Bridge, the Platjan Bridge development projects for improved road and air linkages and travel into and out of Botswana. Implementation of the revised tourism policy with the aim of transforming and economy through promoting domestic and foreign direct investment so as to boost the air transport and tourism sectors. The signing of the single African air transport agreement aimed at facilitating the development of a single African air transport market for easier travel around the continent, thus promoting a smooth flow of services, goods, and people in the continent. The implementation of e-visa and the e-passports for efficient cross-border travel, trade, and tourism. Development and implementation of virtual platforms, namely Virtual Botswana Travel and Tourism Expo, launched in December 2020, the Virtual International Tourism Bourse, launched in March 2021, as well as the Botswana Live Virtual Tours campaign, launched in August 2021. The liberalization of air transportation and tourism sectors to allow for private sector in participation and private air charter services. This initiative has indeed attracted a lot of interest and participation from both local and foreign investors. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Botswana aspires to become a regional logistics and tourism hub. Therefore, be rest assured that despite Botswana's relatively limited market size and landlocked position, its central location in SADC presents multiple opportunities for investors seeking to tap into the air transport and tourism sectors in the region because of her strategic location. Furthermore, Botswana's air infrastructure is international civil aviation compliant, less congested, and offers a more competitive fee structure. The country has a capacity to serve as a satellite hub, complementing other regional hubs, and to service niche markets as well as underserviced routes, thus expanding its air freight and air passenger volumes into Africa as a whole. Botswana's growing tourism market will be aligned to growing cargo and logistics capacity and opportunities within the country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Botswana's innovative intra-regional corridor developments and interconnectivity of road, rail, and air cargo provide a modal platform to access local, regional, and international markets. This is why we continue to promote opportunities in the air transport and tourism sectors by creating a conducive investment environment with the following incentives: no foreign exchange controls, remittances, and full repatriation of profits. So why should you invest in Botswana? Beyond the above cited incentives, as one of the most business-friendly and stable countries in the region, Botswana provides investors with a conducive and welcoming operating environment, a high degree of safety and security, as well as strong focus on the rule of law. To conclude my remarks, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me emphasize that Botswana is on an economic diversification drive that ensures liberalization of air services and deregulation of domestic tourism industry for increased connectivity in air travel, regional and global air links. This will improve competitiveness of locally produced goods and services, as well as facilitate more domestic players, strategic partnerships created with the private sector to enhance the country as a regional air transportation and tourism hub. I look forward to having further engagements with you on Botswana to further explore this great opportunity. I thank you for the promise that lies ahead, and a very good morning.
We're really grateful to you, Your Excellency, for taking time from your busy schedule to join us, to share your insights, and also to tell us how wonderful Botswana is. I've also told them too. Botswana has an enabling business environment. It's open for business. But what we're telling you all here today is Africa is open for business, and certainly in the transport, aviation, tourism sectors as well. Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to warmly welcome His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone, who has joined us. We truly appreciate your being here, sir. I'd also like to acknowledge the participation and the arrival of the President of Afrexim Bank, an important development finance institution and partner in the process of trade and in the building of a lot of trade infrastructure and trade facilitation services. We welcome you, Dr. Oroma. I mentioned that our partners for this year's forum, Google Global, and also Africa 24. I don't have to tell you what Google is. We're probably all using Google right now as I speak. But they are one of the 10 most valuable companies in the world, and they really believe that big data, tech, AI, and a lot of those systems will underpin how you modernize transport and logistic services. And to that end, they want to be part of the solution. They believe that in the work that's being done in Africa, and they support this initiative. And so here is a message from Sundar Pichai, the Global Chief Executive of Google.
To address this business forum on the occasion of the African Union Summit. Thanks to your leadership, the African continent has experienced rapid economic growth despite pressing challenges. It's been especially inspiring to see the role technology has played in enabling African-led solutions to African and global problems. Africa is increasingly a place where innovation begins. People all over the world now use mobile payment systems first developed in Kenya. Renewable energy innovations on the continent are shaping a more sustainable future. And the emerging digital technologies in air transport and tourism in Africa that you are discussing here today will improve connectivity on a global scale. Expanding opportunities through technology is deeply personal to me. Growing up in India, every new innovation, from the rotary phone to the refrigerator, improved my family's life. The chance to bring technology to more people is what drew me to Google and to its mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. For 14 years, we've partnered with African governments to deliver on that mission. We opened our first office in Egypt in May 2007, and Google's founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, hired our very first African Googlers. Since then, our presence has grown to include offices in Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and an AI research lab in Accra, Ghana. Together, we have helped 100 million Africans affordably access the internet, trained 6 million people in digital skills since 2017, and invested in the African startup ecosystem. Across all of these efforts, digital technology has been a powerful engine for progress. That opportunity will only grow. 300 million more people will come online in the next 5 years. Many of them are young, entrepreneurial, and digitally savvy. What's more, the African Continental Free Trade Area will boost intra-African trade and generate investments in infrastructure. Said simply, Africa is on the brink of a digital transformation. Companies like ours can play an important role in partnership with governments, the African Union, and the UN support digital transformation in Africa. We are focused on the priorities outlined in our Digital Sprinters report, which illustrates how adoption of technology can accelerate economic growth. It starts with expanding affordable and reliable internet access for more people with infrastructure investments such as our Equiano subsea cable. Working with partners like Econet, our Thara team is helping activity to more communities. It uses light to transmit information at super high speeds through the air. We're also investing in startups in areas important to Africa's economy. That includes transport and tourism, the theme of today's forum. For example, we have invested in startups like SafeBoda, an app that connects passengers to a community of safe, trusted drivers through our $50 million Africa Investment Fund. And Send, a logistics platform that helps move cargo across Africa, received equity-free funding from our Black Founders Fund. At the core of all these initiatives is partnership. Success means working in close collaboration with African governments, the AU, the UNECA, and businesses in the digital ecosystem. We are committed to doing just that, to ensure every person in Africa can shape and share in the opportunities technology creates. Thank you.
Yeah, I was about to say, yes, he's virtual, but he deserves a round of applause from the room. Thank you very much to the Global Chief Executive Officer, Sundar Pichai, who is the head of Google and Alphabet. Thank you very, very much. Okay, he says Google believes in Africa because Africa is on the precipice of a digital revolution. That is why we're having this conversation, because so much of that innovation is going to manifest in the transport and transport infrastructure space. Opportunities we should leverage. Countries that are ready to take up those opportunities is a country like Sierra Leone. If there's one country that has risen from the ashes like a phoenix, to turn its narrative around, to become one of the fastest growing African nations, to really take advantage of its natural endowments, from commercial farms, great agricultural lands, to mining, beautiful beaches that are starting to draw in tourists from across the world, is this country. And my understanding is they're ready to take advantage of everything that is available as a tool to enhance the Sierra Leonean economy, from the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area to these digital tools, to finding different ways in which to bring people to Sierra Leone and take Sierra Leone's people into the rest of the world. And so please, the warmest welcome to he who will deliver a keynote for us today, His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, the President of Sierra Leone.
Your Excellencies, Dr. Vera Songwe, Mr. Sundar Pichai, the Chief Executive Officer of Google, who just addressed us. Maybe I should use this opportunity to invite you to Sierra Leone, because we are very bullish on digital technology and moving at a very high speed. This is an invitation extended to you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off today's statement by commending INECA for bringing us together here this morning to discuss how we can accelerate our collective effort towards realizing Agenda 2063. No doubt, there is a direct correlation between market and resource accessibility, economic productivity, economic diversification, and job creation on one hand, and a balanced and mutually beneficial regional economic development on the other. The missing centerpiece, however, is a deeper engagement on investment in transportation infrastructure. Economic product. This year's theme, investing in multimodal transport, to optimize the benefits of Africa continental free trade, a focus on air transport and tourism, therefore resonates very well with strategic thinking that informs some of our development plans in Sierra Leone. So this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and listen to all the leaders, policymakers, and experts is truly welcome. Thank you, UNECA, for inviting me to this forum. To my mind, critical to this conversation are two key questions. First, how do we recenter our economic growth strategies and priorities to include the development of transportation infrastructure, which is critical for attracting investment and critical too for trade, sustained growth, and economic development? That is a question we have to answer as accurately as possible. In essence, I assert as a general premise that ships, boats, barges, trains, planes, and automobiles are all central to developing productive sectors of the economy and for supporting economic development overall. The need to overhaul or develop new maritime ports, riverine waterways, airports, roads, and railway networks is critical, as has been emphasized earlier. We therefore need financing streams to either revamp existing transportation infrastructure or develop new ones. Secondly, and this one flows from the previous point I made just now, in a COVID era, with reduced passenger and freight flows, shrinking investment capital, and declining world trade volumes, how do we successfully engage private and public sectors and other partners to invest in transportation infrastructure? No doubt, we all agree that we must boost intra-African trade, taking large volumes of investment capital, expand our economic productivity, and participate fully on the global market. Part of why Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is so important to the future of economic prosperity of Africa is that it is the pathway for accelerating shared economic growth and prosperity through greater economic integration. But poor transport infrastructure and the comparatively prohibitive existing cost of transportation to, within, and out of Africa are among major constraints that impede economic productivity and economic integration in Africa. Maritime, air, road freight volumes are lower. This has implications for other sectors of the economy, including manufacturing, mining, agriculture, and tourism. Some of the reasons for the poor transport infrastructure include dwindling public finance investment in transportation infrastructure. As it is, governments are contending with high debt burdens, rising inflation, generally low productivity, etc. This has further worsened with the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on African economies in general. Private capital has been unable to support the wholesome development of transportation infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, how do we go beyond these is an imperative because Africa must move forward. First, the ratification and implementation of intra-African agreements that facilitate trade and economic development is important because it improves connectivity and reduces cost. Following the ratification of the African Continental Free Trade, Sierra Leone was one of the first states to take the proactive step of drafting and validating a new national trade strategy developed with the support of UNECA. This was informed by 200 consultations undertaken with various stakeholders in country, from the public sector, private sector associations, development partners, and think tanks. Beyond policy, we are looking for opportunities and possibilities. A key part of our domestication plan included a coordination meeting that helped our partners align their investments and efforts with the activities outlined in the strategies action plan. As a result of implementing the AfCFTA, we are also working with UNECA to update our industrialization policy and strategy on special economic zones in line with expected structural transformation of our economy. For smaller countries like Sierra Leone, integrating with wider market is essential to our economic growth and diversification. It is only by accessing a wider market that our businesses can scale up production and attract investments in diverse sectors. It is only by participating in this larger market that our producers can add value to our raw materials and supply inputs to regional value chains. It is only by implementing the AfCFTA that our citizens can have access to high-quality made-in-Africa products. Sierra Leone has also committed to the single African air transport market, and we are working with for the full implementation of the Yamoussoukro decision for the liberalization of air transport markets in Africa. We encourage others that have yet to sign to make that commitment to SAATM. Aviation is important to the economy of Sierra Leone because it contributes to GDP, to the GDP, creates jobs, and has knock-on effects for other sectors of the economy. So, although Sierra Leone does not have a national airline, with its membership of the SAATM, it ensures that an eligible African airline is designated to operate routes from Sierra Leone. Additionally, by acceding to bilateral air service agreement, Sierra Leone has adopted liberal principles in negotiating air service agreements with a number of African states by removing restrictions and barriers on capacity, tariffs, and ownership control. In addition, Sierra Leone has ratified the Montreal Convention and such other international commitments as the Cape Town Convention and its protocols. We believe that by making routes predictable, we can improve tourism inflows, passenger volumes, and support the export of perishable goods. Sierra Leone has also grappled head-on with challenges in the aviation industry. We are implementing urgent steps to improve ICAO safety oversight. We can maximize investor awareness of the potential markets we offer by improving data collection and research on air freight volumes and passenger experience. Currently, we are working on a private Turkish company to improve airport infrastructure at the only international airport in Sierra Leone. We are constructing a modern terminal building with state-of-the-art facilities. Also, part of Sierra Leone's development strategy is to build a bridge from the current airport to the capital. For those who don't understand, our airport is separated by a huge body of water between the city and the airport. Currently, a mix of ferry and private boat move people and goods across. The economic and other benefits of a bridge that joins the two land masses is immense. But there is a struggle mobilizing exclusively private capital to finance such a large venture. This is where we think multilateral institutions like the World Bank can come in with products like to de-risk such large capital investments in transportation infrastructure, thus making them attractive. Additionally, we have in recent years expanded the maritime port at our natural deep sea harbor, rehabilitated and expanded highways leading to Liberia and Guinea borders. These initiatives demonstrate our willingness to invest in multimodal transport and have had the cumulative effect of positioning Sierra Leone favorably for opening up the rural economy and expanding trade. There is scope for more investment and expansion in new ports and possible rail networks to economic centers in the rural areas and into the sub-region. Geographically, Sierra Leone presents the shortest transshipment route to South America, Europe, and North America, 6 hours to all three continents. There is also the rich possibility of cooperation with our landlocked neighbors further on to develop transit infrastructure to our natural harbors. Beyond the immediate objective of transiting goods, transnational transportation infrastructure networks and corridors can connect and open up new production centers. The beginnings of a sub-regional infrastructure master plan around energy and ICT have been promising, especially with the operationalization of the Transco CLSG line linking our four countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to close, but let me say a big thank you to INECA for this invitation and for its continued support to the government and people of Sierra Leone. The opportunities for new transportation sector infrastructure development are many in Sierra Leone. The prospects for making decent returns on investment are huge. The implications for sustainable economic growth, both nationally and across sub-region, are positive. On that note, I thank you for your attention.
I think that was a well-articulated case for Sierra Leone and the linkages of the regional economy. Please, can we give another warm applause to His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone. What I would like to do now is ask an opportunity of our Excellencies, VIP guests, to come forward for a photo opportunity. We do have protocol officials who will just manage. We can continue the program. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, sir. I was under the impression that you were going to leave. Okay, we will be having a photo opportunity with our VIP. We have Her Excellency